Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese concluded his visit to China on November 7, 2023. He met with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Li Qiang. The Australian government said the meeting signaled a stabilization of relations between Australia and China.
But the engagement that I've had with China, with President Xi, have been positive. They have been constructive. He has never said anything to me that has not been done. And that's a positive way that you have to start off dealing with people. But we recognise as well that we come with different political systems, very different values.
两国领导人会见会谈，议题广泛。
The meetings and talks between the leaders of the two countries were wide-ranging, in-depth, friendly, and fruitful. The reactions of the two countries and the international community have been positive. China is willing to work with Australia to adhere to mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit, and to seek common ground while reserving differences under the guidance of the important consensus between the leaders of the two countries.
平等互利，求同存异。
Is this really the case? Prior to his visit to China, Albanese made a 4-day visit to the White House. On October 25th, at a press conference with U.S. President Joe Biden, he said that AUKUS, the Trilateral Security Partnership, would promote innovation and cooperation to enhance the capabilities of the U.S., Australia, and the UK to help ensure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region.
The AUKUS agreement is so central, and I thank you, Mr. President, for the work that you've done in persuading legislators to make sure that we put in place the measures that are necessary to encourage that two-way transfer of defence technology that will be at the centre of an agreement that's about peace and security in our region, but also about prosperity in our region as well. In today's uncertain world, the alliance between Australia and the United States and the way that we stand steadfast against aggression, whether it be Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine or whether it be Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel, is something that can be relied upon for us to stand up for our common values. And that's why I very much welcome this visit and welcome the cooperation.
Well, I was asked by Xi Jinping a couple of years ago why I was working so hard with your country. And I said, because we're a Pacific nation. He looked at me and said, yeah, we're a Pacific nation, the United States. And we are. We're going to stay that way. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely.
Over the past few years, China and Australia have repeatedly placed mutual restrictions on different sectors against each other. For example, on November 27, 2020, the CCP announced temporary anti-dumping tariffs on Australian wines. Lobster, timber, and barley shipments were also blocked or restricted. The Chinese embassy lists 14 complaints against Australia, including blocking 10 Chinese investments on national security grounds. In December 2020, at a WTO meeting, Australia raised concerns about the CCP's measures to restrict or ban the export of Australian barley, wine, meat, dairy products, live seafood, logs, timber, coal, and cotton to China. In fact, it wasn't long before China realized that domestic circulation on its own simply wouldn't work. On January 3, 2023, the CCP allowed 3 government-backed public companies and its largest steel maker to resume coal imports from Australia. We analyzed in previous episodes that China actually needed Australia more in terms of economic and trade exchanges. On November 4, 2023, Albanese arrived in Shanghai in the evening. The next day, he attended the Shanghai Import Expo. Chinese Premier Li Qiang promised at the expo that China would further expand market access and increase imports. We will continue to promote opening up and market opportunities. We will further ease market access, implementing relevant policies such as lifting all restrictions on foreign investment in the manufacturing sector, protect the rights and interests of foreign investors in accordance with the law, and continue to create a marketization, legal, and international business environment. In his speech, Premier Li Qiang said China would actively promote its application to join the CPTPP, the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. One of the members of the CPTPP is Australia.
And we know that constructive economic engagement between countries helps to build relationships and helps to build understanding, both of common interests and where there are differences. And that is why the government that I lead will continue to work constructively with China. As the business people in this room understand so well, it is in all our interest to have a relationship where there is dialogue and cooperation. It's a great pleasure to be with you at the China International Import Expo. Along with the other economies in our region, Australia and China have prospered thanks to the certainty and stability that is made possible by rules-based trade. Every country has a role to play in advancing trade that is both sustainable and inclusive.
The current Australian Prime Minister is the leader of the Labor Party, who is more moderate towards the CCP. On the issue of the CPTPP, both the CCP and Taiwan have applied for membership. The former Australian government supported Taiwan's addition. The current government is ambivalent. In a press conference prior to his trip, Albanese emphasized the importance of Chinese to Australian trade and the recent progress made on tariff issues concerning timber, barley, hay, and wine. In October 2023, Beijing agreed to review a 218% dumping duty imposed on Australian wine, but demanded that it be resolved by bundling them with Australia's anti-dumping tariffs on wind towers, railway hubs, and stainless steel sinks imposed on Chinese products. On the eve of the Prime Minister's visit to China, Australia's Anti-Dumping Council issued a decision recommending the removal of the 9% tariff on Chinese wind towers. The Labour government denied that it interfered with the Anti-Dumping Committee's decision to reach what Beijing described as a package deal. But Dan McKenna, managing director of Victorian wind tower manufacturing company Keppel Prince, disagrees. He accused the Anti-Dumping Council of being unjustified in removing anti-dumping duties when it knew China was dumping products, and criticized the Labour government for selling out the wind tower industry in exchange for lifting the CCP's ban on Australian wines. Upon taking office as Prime Minister in May 2022, Albanese took steps to stabilize relations with the CCP and met Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Indonesia in November 2022. Since then, Beijing quickly began lowering trade barriers to Australia, allowing imports of Australian coal in January and removing tariffs on Australian barley in August 2023. At present, a little over 37% of Australia's total exports go to China, down sharply from a high of about 45% in 2021. Economists attribute the drop in exports partly to China's sluggish economic recovery from the epidemic. It may also reflect the reluctance of Australian exporters to take such a big gamble in a country that is prepared to use economic coercion. So, the meeting could be considered a case of timing. The CCP has experienced strong international blockade and control, and its economy is weak, desperate to look for markets. In Australia, a moderate Australian Prime Minister took office, changing the previous government's relatively tough policy toward China. On November 6, when meeting Albanese, Xi Jinping smiled. This year marks the 50th anniversary of Mr. Whitlam's first visit to China as Australian Prime Minister. As a Chinese proverb goes, when drinking water, one should never forget who dug the well. The Chinese people would never forget Whitlam, the man who dug the well for China-Australia relations. Now, we have ushered in the new 50 years of China-Australia relations. Your current visit is building on past achievements and opening up new prospects. We met for the first time in Bali last year and had a good talk. We agreed then that our two countries should make contact with each other in a mature way. A sound and stable China-Australia relationship serves the common interests of the two countries and peoples and meets the common expectations of countries in the region. We should push forward the China-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. According to the Associated Press, Albanese told reporters, "We even had a bit of a debate about wine and the quality." He said that Xi had said during their meeting that he had visited New Zealand and been told how good the wines are there. "I asserted Australia's preeminence when it comes to quality red wine," Albanese said. Xi also talked about his visits to Australia and described Tasmanian devils as cute. When Albanese said that they probably weren't as cute as pandas, Xi replied that not all pandas were cute, citing the Kung Fu Panda movie. What did Xi mean by this remark? Perhaps he himself wasn't sure. But we think not all pandas are cute is a good point, and we'll explain it at the end of this episode. Xi Jinping has been smiling a lot lately. Most recently, he met with the governor of California. In that meeting, Xi noted that China-US relations have developed to the present day, and the results are hard-won and deserve to be cherished. It's a stance that's quite different from the wolf warrior stance. I'm quite impressed with California. In my first visit to the US 38 years ago, my first stop was California. That is San Francisco. China and the US are the world's two top economies, accounting for a third of the global economy, a quarter of the world's population, and a fifth of the total global trade volume. The principle China has upheld in China-US relations is mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation. We will continue to work in this direction and hope that the US will work with China in the same direction. Separately, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited the US on October 26th, paving the way for a meeting between Xi and Biden in San Francisco in November on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit. Judging from the enthusiastic reports in the Chinese official media, the CCP has a strong desire to improve its relations with the US amidst its internal party personnel problems and a severe economic recession. The sudden shift in official attitude towards the US has left many little pinks out of sorts. When the news came out, the media on all platforms reported it, saying that they wanted to promote China-US relations, making it stable and friendly. For those who originally talked about history, told stories, popularized the subject, taught English, discussed people's livelihoods, spoke out on social hot topics on the web, and called the US lapdogs at every turn, they were all blindsided for a moment. Even the comment section was much quieter. It's funny. It reminds me of the end of last year when the government suddenly said they were going to lift the lockdown. Those people were like lost souls. Later, they went back to their normal lives. The fact proves that those people don't have any independent thinking about the world in front of them. They just follow whatever wind the government blows. When they want to demonstrate a sense of pride, they say, "It's better to die with honor than to live in infamy." When they want to yield to the US, they would claim, "A great man knows when to yield and when not." I wonder if the people who used to thrive on cursing the American imperialism are now going to make a 180-degree turn. Are they going to praise the US vehemently? If I understand it correctly, the government's attitude is currently threefold: support and encouragement of private enterprise, encouragement of opening up, and improving US-China relations. Should some of these vloggers reflect on themselves and consider what kind of people they want to be? I mean people who used to portray private entrepreneurs as evil capitalists, who used to turn their backs quickly on foreign companies and tell them to get out of China. Those who advocated China to close its doors, those who tried to profit from speculating on the government's policies, and those who condemned others who think differently as American lapdogs. It isn't surprising that the CCP would use foreign government leaders or high-ranking officials that it feels are pro-communist for propaganda, acting like the world needs China. It's used to not only brainwash the Chinese public, but also drive a wedge and divide the Western countries from the inside.
Thank you very much, President Xi, for your very warm welcome here in Beijing. It is almost a year since we met in Bali. We agreed that we would take the relationship forward in the mutual interests of both of our countries. In that 50 years, the remarkable achievement of China in lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty deserves respect and praise. Australia, along with other countries in the region, has an interest in continued stable growth in the Chinese economy and its ongoing engagement with the world, and that a strong relationship between our two countries will be beneficial into the future.
After the meeting, Albanese said that the meeting with Xi was positive, constructive. In his remarks to the outside world, he raised the importance of trade and communication as well as the importance of regional security.
I noted very much that unimpeded trade was in the interests of both countries, was good for Chinese consumers as well as Australian exporters. AUKUS didn't come up explicitly. We discussed, though, regional stability, and we discussed the need for example, on Taiwan, I reiterated Australia's support for the status quo. Well, we're committed to AUKUS, and we're busy implementing it. And that's what I mean by dealing with people honestly, up front. We've been up front about our engagement. We think that AUKUS is in Australia's national interest. We also think that AUKUS is a vehicle to promote security, peace and stability in the region.
It can be seen that Australia is still actively seeking a security partnership with the UK and the US. However, Albanese tried to underplay it in Beijing. It will inevitably be perceived by the CCP that Australia is still fighting against its influence in the region. On the eve of Albanese's visit to China, a Taiwan diplomat told the Australian Financial Review that the People's Republic of China always likes to weaponize trade to attack other economies. Our experience has shown that dealing with the CCP can sometimes be very dangerous and that Beijing is the least trustworthy partner. Western businessmen and political leaders who are friendly to the CCP are often called panda huggers, and the reason for being friendly is the current globalized and interdependent economic order. However, they fail to realize that their countries have a different political system and different values from those of Red China, and the CCP's perceptions of the international order are very different and even contradictory. If both value systems assert themselves, future clashes, rivalries, or conflicts are inevitable or a matter of course. Australia's former Prime Minister Morrison and current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese have taken different paths. In an environment where the world is beginning to realize the damage that the CCP has done to the world order, Albanese's drastic revision of his predecessor's policies should be challenged by different voices domestically in the future. The current strategy of the Australian government is to get closer to the CCP in economic and trade matters and to rely on the US for international order and security issues. It lacks the ability to recognize the CCP's ever-changing tactics. The leasing of Darwin Port by China under the Enhanced Trade Cooperation between Australia and China is one example. Port Darwin is an important strategic port and gateway to Australia, where the US operates a military base. In 2015, the Northern Territory government decided to lease Darwin Port to the CCP-linked Landbridge Group for 99 years at a price of 506 million Australian dollars. On October 20, 2023, the Albanese government released the audit results of the Darwin Port lease, stating that after considering national security interests, it saw no need to change or cancel the 99-year lease to a private Chinese enterprise. Currently, the CCP is in a predicament and needs to appeal to Australia and the international community to boost China's economy and rescue its regime. The Australian government should have been tougher on the issue of human rights, leaving no room for compromise. China's entire market is now weak and the economy is in a downturn. Chinese people simply have no confidence in spending, and they don't have the money to spend on luxury goods as they used to. That's to say that some in the Australian business community haven't got a clear picture of what's going on. In the long run, Australia relies more on the US in terms of national security. In the event of a conflict between Australia and the CCP, Australia will have to side with the US. Therefore, it's unrealistic to expect a friendly and cozy relationship with the CCP. Perhaps in the future, more Australians will echo the words of Xi Jinping. Not all pandas are cute.